Tonight on PrimeTime, another White House peace deal. Leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, hosted by President Trump, have signed a ceasefire accord to end the two countries' long-running conflict. Tonight we examine whether warm words in the Oval Office will translate into a real and long-lasting peace. Another Trump peace deal, but will rhetoric match reality? Good evening. In Washington, Presidents Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo have reaffirmed their commitment to the US brokered agreement, with President Donald Trump hosting the signing ceremony. Now, the accord lands as hostilities persist in eastern Congo, prompting fresh scrutiny over how quickly its provisions can take effect. Here's our Washington correspondent with the latest.
President Donald Trump is hosting yet another landmark peace summit in Washington, D.C. This time it is with the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, who have come together to put their signature on a peace deal that is expected to bring to an end a war that has ravaged the Central African region. The deal is also expected to attract significant investment in the mining sector and expand U.S. access to strategic mineral deposits in the Congo. The DRC is rich with critical minerals, but fighting between Rwandan-backed M23 rebels and DRC government forces has killed and displaced thousands. It's a great day for Africa and a great day for the world, the president said on Thursday afternoon. President Trump also announced that major U.S. companies will be entering the mining markets in Congo and Rwanda, with a specific focus on extracting rare earth minerals. The leaders of the DRC and Rwanda signed an economic integration agreement, and they pledged to fulfill their commitment to halt the fighting. The White House views economic integration and cooperation between the two countries as the foundation to ensure that fighting does not flare up into mass killings once again. The agreement was signed inside the building of the U.S. Institute for Peace, which, in recognition of President Trump's accomplishments in the field of conflict resolution, has now been officially renamed to the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace. The State Department said that the renaming of the institute was in recognition of President Trump's achievements in the arena of global peace. It may still take some time to translate a peace agreement here in Washington to a full-fledged reality on the ground in the Congo. Clashes between rebels and the Congolese forces are still taking place, according to reports on the ground, with both sides accusing one another of violating the existing ceasefire agreement. A White House official said that the deal signing, quote, recommits the parties to the peace process and reflected months of intensive diplomacy led by President Trump, who made it clear to both the DRC and Rwanda that the status quo was unacceptable. I'm Ubi Shabander for AnewZ, Washington, D.C.
Well, let's cross over to the capital of the DRC, Kinshasa, now, and speak to Chris Ockenringer, our correspondent over there. Chris, good to see you. How are the major national newspapers over there presenting this agreement? Are they treating it as a meaningful step towards stability, or striking a more cautious tone given the continued violence in the east?
Yes, Guy, one of the leading newspapers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Le Potentiel, has described the U.S. brokered peace deal as a historic step towards ending decades of conflict in eastern Congo. They led with a headline that praised DRC President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwanda's Paul Kagame for turning a new page by signing the U.S. brokered peace accord. Other online media like Actuality.cd quoted U.S. President Donald Trump as saying he has succeeded to end a long-running war where others have failed. Some Congolese have expressed optimism that Rwanda's President Paul Kagame and his Congolese counterpart Felix Tshisekedi will respect each other's territorial integrity and settle their dispute peacefully as outlined in the peace deal. U.S. President Donald Trump described the signing of the peace deal as a miracle. He said, The DRC and Rwanda spent a lot of time killing each other, but will now spend a lot of time hugging, holding hands, and taking advantage of the United States of America economically like every other country does. President Trump also signed a separate deal with the DRC that will grant American firms access to the DRC's critical minerals. Some prominent Congolese citizens, like 2018 Nobel Peace Laureate Denis Mukwege, have described the U.S. brokered peace deal as illegitimate and incapable of establishing lasting peace in eastern DRC. He criticized the U.S. for prioritizing its economic interests and ignoring the real drivers of conflict in eastern DRC. Other Congolese have dismissed the agreement as a foreign-imposed document which has not been approved by the DRC parliament. They also criticized one of its key provisions for economic cooperation between the DRC and Rwanda as a violation of the DRC's sovereign right to decide who to do business with. But millions of displaced people in eastern DRC just want peace to be restored in their region, regardless of the details in the agreement. Fighting in their villages in North Kivu province began in late 2021 after the M23 rebel group launched attacks against positions of the DRC army. The rebels accused the government of failing to honor a previous peace deal and marginalizing their community of ethnic Tutsis. But the DRC government has denied the accusation and blamed Rwanda for backing the rebels to seize mineral-rich territories in the country's east. Rwanda has also denied the charge and accused the DRC of supporting an ethnic Hutu militia known as FDLR that carried out the 1994 Rwandan genocide that targeted the Tutsis. Fighting has continued between the M23 rebels and Congolese forces in eastern DRC despite the signing of the U.S. brokered peace deal. The peace agreement signed in Washington on Thursday is one among many that have been signed over the course of the past 3 decades. The past deals have been repeatedly violated. The DRC government hopes this latest one will be respected given the U.S.'s involvement as a mediator.
Now, for a different perspective on this, I'm delighted now to be joined by Adamu Garba II, who is joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. Mr. Garba, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Primetime. We're very happy indeed to have you with us. From your perspective then, Washington's role in this, does it strengthen stability, or do you see this all about the US shaping really their own agenda?
So you see, if you look at the 2023 reports of the United States about DRC specifically, they mentioned the mineral reserve of almost 25 trillion US dollars, cobalt, coltan, manganese, lithium, and tantalum. So this is the huge strategic interest for the US semiconductor companies, defense that is used in their production of electric vehicles, their strategic defense industries, and their computer chips and mobile phones, and so many other latest technological innovation, especially driven by the AI. That is the principal driver of United States in securing that peace, access to these minerals and materials. In fact, when you read the United States National Strategy paper that was released about 33 pages last month of November, you will see very clearly anywhere Africa is mentioned in that 33 pages document, minerals and also rare earth materials follows it. So the strategic interest of the United States in Africa is driven by these minerals or critical minerals or rare earth materials. And that's exactly why they enhance this interest. So it is in line with the US Grand National Security Strategy globally. It's also in line with their strategic economic interests. So that is the principal driver behind signing this agreement. Not necessarily to have total peace, but to have access to these critical minerals. So if the peace is the price to have access to this material, of course, the United States will do everything possible to ensure the peace. But if, of course, the conflict will also grant this material, from the history, we know how US operates, they may not care provided this $25 trillion worth of rare earth materials is available for their own enterprise.
So that's your evaluation of the drivers. What's your analysis of the timing? Because there had been, hadn't there, some sense of a commitment back in the summer. You know, what difference really has occurred since then, and why now? Why is this timing? Why is this pomp and ceremony occurring right now, do you think?
No, because if you look at the geopolitical shift globally, China is a strong player in that domain. And then most recently in May, the president of the United States was in the Gulf countries, the Persian Gulf countries, where he secured mega deals, especially in the strategic defense industry, hundreds of billions of US dollars. And the principal players in these rare earth minerals in DRC are the UAE and the Qatari government. So this defense asset, the supply they need to do, they need to have access to this material to be able to meet up with the supply of the procurements that they have gotten from the Gulf states. And the Gulf state also needs to make sure that they secure this supply chain to continue to power the industry of the US for them to produce what they need. So there is a general connection, because if you look at what is happening in the DRC, the M23 rebels were constantly in Qatar to try to secure negotiation with the Qatari interests. Meanwhile, United States has brought the two governments together of Rwanda and Democratic Republic of the Congo to mediate this peace deal. So I believe everything is timed, from the May visit of the Gulf state to the July signing of the first agreement to now bringing the two governments together to sign, is all in alignment. But if you look at the way even the agreement was signed, the body language of the two leaders, Felix Tshisekedi and Paul Kagame, they don't even shake their hands. You know, when you are signing a peace deal, traditionally, there are supposed to be some hugging, some pleasantries, and shaking of hands, warm handshakes. But it doesn't happen this way. So it's like they were just bundled together in that particular place to get this agreement so that the timing can be right. So that's basically what I believe from what happened in the Washington, D.C. yesterday.
Given the awkward body language, as you've just described, given the geopolitical aims of the US, the links, the kind of proxy aims of the Gulf countries, given all of that going on behind the scenes, are you confident that we're about to head into a long-lasting ceasefire and peace?
To be very candid with you, if we have a long-lasting peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, in that great region at this very moment, it will be a miracle. Because even as your reporter confirmed, there has been series of these peace agreements over the past 3 decades that have been signed, but they always ended up in collapse. Even, in fact, as recently as Tuesday this week, there was an aerial bombardment, you know, and both the two sides are blaming each other. The government of the Congo are blaming the M23 rebels, and the M23 rebels are of course blaming the government. And the government of DRC wanted a disarmed M23 rebels. And the government of Rwanda, even spoken by the foreign minister, clearly confirmed that until FDLR, the rebel group that carried out the Rwandan genocide in 1994, were formally decommissioned by the Democratic Republic of the Congo interests, they are not going to withdraw M23 rebel. So it seems like we have signed a pen and paper and we have agreed that there could be peace deal, but all our arsenals are on the front lines. They were all as the first line of charge, and at the minimum provocation, they will still begin to shoot their bombs and bullets. So that's basically what it is. So that's why I believe if we have recorded the peace deal, which is what we hope for, which is what we pray that the president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, who has properly packaged himself as a peace president, within the first 9 months of his presidency, he secured peace deal across 8 conflict zones in the world. If they will deploy all the necessary instruments to secure peace in the DRC and Rwandan conflict, I think it will be the best for us in Africa. But personally, I believe it's going to be a miracle for us to see peace, you know, sustained in this region when both the two armed groups are ready, willing, and able to continue to carry out the attacks whenever necessary at the slightest provocation.
We know that there are established investment-based relationships between Kigali and Gulf countries, Qatar being one of them. And there is obvious influence potential there politically. In terms of influencing the DRC, what is it that people in that country are looking for? How could they be persuaded to peaceful resolution, do you think?
It is really going to be very difficult because this is the country that have suffered a decade of neglect. Several generations of the people grew up in conflict-ridden zones. They know nothing other than child abuse in the labor camps, mining sites, and also carrying weapons and killing each other. So it is a general problem. And the DRC has never had a very strong foreign backing that should influence them to come to the table, other than now, when the United States stepped in with the current government of Felix Tshisekedi agreeing to come to the table. And do not forget, even Felix Tshisekedi was being intransigent at Praio until there was a very strong pressure from M23 rebel pushing towards Goma, getting into Kinshasa, that he now sought for foreign help to push them back. So it means that it's looking much likely that he was also forced to come online. He was also forced to come online because of the pressure he is facing from the rebels in that place. So it means that should there be any challenge, a very strong challenge that now surfaced, it means that it's likely that he's going to go back to that crisis. And that's a very serious challenge.
Well, Mr. Garba, we will let you take that call. I hope it's not urgent, but we thank you very much indeed for your analysis. We're going to go now to a very short break. Thank you very much. Okay, do stay with us. We'll be back very shortly indeed. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Now, by 2100, Europe could lose a third of its population if immigration stalls, while the number of people over 80 nearly doubles. Well, economists say these shifts could transform everything from the workplace to pensions. We explore what's driving Europe's demographic crisis and how it could be solved.
Europe is entering one of the biggest demographic shifts in its modern history. The numbers point in one direction: fewer people, older populations, and rising pressure on the labour market. The changes are slow but structural, and they will shape Europe's economy, society, and global competitiveness for decades. Eurostat predicts the EU population reaching a peak of 453 million in 2026 before beginning a long decline. Even with current trends, the EU is expected to fall to around 428 million by 2050. Without migration, the picture is far sharper: 34% drop by 2100, meaning 1 in 3 Europeans would disappear over the next 75 years. This decline is tied to several factors. A new UNFPA survey across 14 countries, including 3 EU members, explains why Europeans are having fewer children than they want. Key findings include economic pressures, health problems, political instability, and gender inequality. These pressures come at a time when the population is aging rapidly. By 2050, the number of people aged 80 plus will almost double in EU. Citizens aged 70 and above will increase steadily, while all younger age groups, including those aged 40 to 60, will shrink. This shift is straining the workforce. The EU is expected to lose 1 to 2 million workers each year in the coming decades. European Central Bank experts warn that aging populations will make labour force expansion more difficult, limiting economic growth. Italy and Spain may lose around half of their populations by 2100 if migration stops. Several others, including Malta, Portugal, Greece and Croatia, also face steep declines. By contrast, most EU candidate countries remain younger. In 2024, people aged 0 to 29 made up roughly 1/3 of the EU. Serbia and Ukraine were slightly below that level, while the rest of the candidate countries had an even higher share of young people. Across all major reports, the conclusion is the same: migration is now essential to stabilising Europe's labour force. It cannot fully offset population ageing, but it can cushion the decline if newcomers are successfully integrated into the workforce. Fertility policies, meanwhile, show results only in the long term. Experts say Europe must avoid panic-driven narratives and instead focus on structural reforms, Stronger gender equality, affordable housing, accessible childcare, social systems designed for an older society, and new migration policies. Demographic change is not a temporary challenge. It is a long-term transformation and, if managed well, an opportunity to redesign Europe's social contract for a more sustainable future.
Azerbaijan and Georgia are pushing to strengthen their cooperation in media and information security as both countries confront a surge in digital threats and cross-border disinformation. Well, at a media forum in Baku, journalists and analysts and policymakers gathered together to assess how the media can safeguard public trust at a time of rapid technological change.
Azerbaijan and Georgia today stand among the closest partners in the South Caucasus, tied together by energy, trade, and regional security, with major routes like the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline and the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway linking their economies. Their bilateral trade has already exceeded $620 million this year, while Azerbaijan remains one of Georgia's main energy suppliers, delivering nearly 3 billion cubic meters of gas annually. Investments between the two neighbours have climbed above $3.6 billion, anchoring their long-term economic relationship. And those deepening links form the backdrop for a different kind of conversation unfolding here in Baku.
The Azerbaijan-Georgia Media Forum has concluded in Baku. The gathering has focused on how the media can strengthen public trust and support information security. The first panel has examined the media ecosystems. Experts have discussed how technological change has reshaped the profession and how social media became a dominant source of information.
Speakers stressed that both countries face similar risks, from AI-driven manipulation to coordinated disinformation campaigns.
It's very important to fight against this lots of different misinformational campaigns, and using this artificial intelligence, deepfakes and things like this. It's very spread now. Different fake news and different media in Georgia and in Azerbaijan can somehow have a similar attitude against these threats, because it's not only misinformation, but it's threats against national interests of both countries.
You know, the BBC example is a great example how huge, large media company, television can affect society and spread disinformation and fake news together.
On the sidelines, youth organizations from the ruling parties of Azerbaijan and Georgia formalized a new partnership promising joint projects, exchanges, and professional development programs.
The forum has taken place at the time when Azerbaijan and Georgia have deepened their cooperation across key sectors. Those discussions has reflected that wider partnership. Sabina Babikirova, AnewZ.
The EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas called on Georgian authorities to respect human rights and stop democratic backsliding. Well, she made the comment at the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe meeting in Vienna on Thursday. Now, her remarks come just days after the arrest of opposition leader Alexandra Aliashvili. Now, he was detained on suspicion of attempting to set fire to a government building in the capital.
In Georgia, the EU calls on the authorities to respect human rights and stop the democratic backsliding. The authorities should release the unjustly detained, investigate all allegations of excessive use of force by law enforcement, and hold those responsible to account.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Dr. Vachtung Maisaya, a political analyst joining us from Tbilisi in Georgia. Dr. Maisaya, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Prime Time. From Tbilisi's standpoint then, how significant is this callous warning? Is it seen as just routine diplomacy, or is it an indication that Brussels believes Georgia is drifting from its definition of democratic standards?
Thank you very much for having me at your disposal. It's a great privilege to me. I would like to mention the second one, absolutely fully just about right statement by just about His Excellency Mrs. Callas about this violation of Georgian human rights. It's absolutely correct statement. Unfortunately, it's reality. Georgia is just about step from the robust democracy to the just about hybrid democracy and just about autocratic just regime tendency. Unfortunately, it's just sad stories, but it's like just well, absolutely implicated of contemporary today's reality in Georgia. When we have like just about concrete like a political vertical power, just about system with about informal leadership, with about just about systematic corruption, which we have seen in the ruling party just representatives, and we have also just seen that of course this is just infringements of the constitutional privileges. I would like to mention Constitution Article 5, 6, 7, 8 being absolutely being violated, unfortunately, by the just ruling party leadership, and of course the police also become is becoming more politicizing, just about instrument for just about dovetail of the informal leadership in Georgia. Unfortunately, it's a reality. And of course, just about when how just disbanded, even new just about scandal, how BBC just about investigation journalist team also uh, just indicate about well hypothetical just about exploitation by the Georgian police of the chemical weapons components. It's also just indicated how human rights being protected in Georgia at time of being.
And you mentioned there about the politicization of things. Does this not just depend on how you see it? You know, if you're on one side, you see this as, you know, entirely valid sort of criticism of the EU. You know, all they want's democracy. The BBC's quite rightly shining a light on terrible things that are happening. But if you're on the other side with a different perspective, you say, who on earth is the EU to start publicly lecturing a sovereign country? And, you know, there were a very small number of sources that were cited in the BBC article. So is this just not more polarization? You know, on one side you see it one way, on another side you see it another.
Well, of course, partially can I fully agree with you just about politics and the politics. For sure, it should be just politicizing in any way. But when you can just about have just about main law, constitution being just about infringed, I would like to mention that in Cuban government even violated Constitution Article 78 about which absolutely just underestimated about Georgian government adherence to the European Union, and NATO integration policy combinations, and even just about by constitutional law, just about procedures. This article hadn't been changed, and just about Georgian government even just conducted constitutional coup d'état. Can you imagine when just constitution been brutally violated? And what about this? On what kind of the democracy could be considered at large?
Well, that's a really
this is a problem.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry to interrupt.
yes.
That's a really good question. It would be moving away from the policy debate. If we just look at the practical incidents that the EU are citing, which they believe constitutes this democratic backsliding. What are we talking about? Are we talking about arrests? Are we talking about pressure on civic groups? Specifically, what are they pointing to?
Yes, absolutely true. About the pressing, about arrest, illegal arrest of all political opposition parties. All political opposition parties are arrested and under jail without just about just I don't know, just unimaginable, even just about criminal causes. It's one case. Second case that all Georgian NGOs been even just about distracted and destroyed. Because why? Because it was introduced so-called Russian law on foreign agency for agent law, which absolutely just about also just abruptly just violated not only Georgian domestic just human rights provisions, but also just greatly just about violated even international human rights law principles, like a convention on the political and civil rights convention of 1950. So about that, we have also facing about no any NGOs just been active in Georgia, and all NGOs forcibly by force been closed down, shut and destroyed by any just about means. It's second. Third, we have also problems of the speech, just about exposures and speech right, the exposure of the human, just about the speech, just about freedom of speech, also being violated. You mentioned that the Georgian government even just accepted a special law which absolutely just prohibited about to make any just about video or just about photo pictures at the court session during the court session period of time. It's also just violations of the just about at least maybe just detained people's persons just about rights. It's never just even in Russia just about it's allowed to make pictures and make photos and make even TV sets in the court just about session hearings. And in Georgia, it's completely just about prohibited.
It's
It's
very
absolutely just about it's absolutely just about just how they outminded in even just about mentality, just outminded, and even just not only incorrectly but absolutely just about not fitted with elemental just about democratic standards of any kind of nations.
I mean, it's some very interesting points that you raised there. What about the Georgian leadership? What about the government? Are they acknowledging any of the EU's criticisms, or are they refuting all of them?
No, just about they're saying about new tales to Georgian societies. They just even just mentioned like it's like a new just about jargon introduced about deep state. They also just implicated and indicated about deep state involvement in Georgia's sovereign, yeah, just about violation, infringement cases, which is absolutely unclear. Even they cannot just clarify what it means deep state. So they also just inspired and inspired some like legends, and these legends even not believed by themselves. So they absolutely have nothing to say, nothing to just about how to say confirmed from their considerations that they are doing wrong things and wrong just about actions, and they also very well perceive those tendency. But just about for Georgians in Cuban just about ruling government, a ruling party, and in Cuban government, they absolutely care less about what European Union just about look at them, and even just about they care less about international relations, international society's position. Unfortunately, it's a reality. So we are facing a new autocratic regime type of just about this type of just about political regime, which absolutely just about ignore everyone and everything. It's about clear indications.
Is there any sense here, though, that the two sides are both characterizing each other in an equally inaccurate way? You could argue that to hold up the EU as the bastion of democracy clearly it would not be an accurate comparison to make. The EU, like many organisations, has had its own corruption cases. There are very serious question marks about how it could be possible to be purely democratically represented by someone that lives so far away from your own country, let alone your own town. And then on the other side, you have a sense in which, well, Georgia,
Yeah, sure.
the Georgian government is responsible for the legislation that's produced in the country. That's part of what a government does, and you could question whether that legislation is something that you like and find tasteful or distasteful. But that's a long way from it being, a sort of entirely corrupt state or a regime. Have we not just got two entities that clearly don't see eye to eye?
Well, there's about the big game, and game also not just about seen as a fair situation. Yes, there's of course also seen about scenarios and games attending just about nations, and if corruption existed for any just about countries, and no any just omissions could be just considered. But the other way, corruption being tackled and dealt and being struggled and fighted. We can see that even European Union just also is just about struggle corruption cases, which has discovered recently in its own just about leadership case. We also can see that even Ukraine government just trying just to struggle against corruption. We also see a case, and many other cases we also see how normal civilian-oriented, civilian just right-oriented nations are trying to tackle with those just about this evil of the 21st century, of course. But we can about how we can say about the Georgian case. When about the ex-prime minister confirmed accepted that he was corrupt, even not been detailed, he will not be detained and even arrested. Can you imagine? And he was absolutely released just without one, just like a fair court or something like this. So how we can consider that it's like a true and absolutely legal binding about battle against corruption cases? We have like a European Union case. We have seen about Ukrainian case. We have seen as an Armenian case. But about Georgian case that I mentioned that have many categories. We have so individual corruption, systematic corruption, elite corruption, and systematic and even total corruption. The four categories don't exist at the time of being. So Georgia is like at the edge of the elite and corruption of cases.
Okay, let's get into the practicalities of this then, because if Georgia does, if the EU does decide that human rights commitments are not being met, what consequences practically could there be? What leverage does the EU have in practical terms?
In terms of concrete consequences of the absolutely very tragic policy of Georgian government, because handed our Georgian further integration to European Union just membership case about they suspended about to accept granted to join into the candidacy just about membership status, which absolutely very tragic event for Georgian society. Even just about we are foreseeing about to suspend it about which is most important about Georgia's society, Georgia citizens, to even just about rest with their just favorite just rights and
Dr. Maisaya, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
We're having some technical problems with the sound. I do apologise. We're going to have to bring things to a close, but we thank you very much indeed for your expert analysis and your perspectives from Tbilisi in Georgia. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Okay, after the break, we're going to take a look at the top business news stories shaping the week with Andy Mioch. Do stay with us. Welcome out. You're watching Prime Time now. Andy Mioch is here with the latest business news stories of the day. Andy, what's on the agenda tonight?
Well, tonight we'll be taking a look at a major deal in entertainment, web outages, social media penalties, and there's also some news out of aviation and some news about pistachios. So let's have a look. We begin with pretty big news from the world of streaming. Netflix has agreed to buy Warner Brothers Discovery in an $82.7 billion deal that will dramatically reshape the established film and TV industry. Warner Brothers formally put itself up for sale in October after receiving interest from several parties.
Netflix announced Friday it's reached a deal to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, bringing a swift end to a dramatic bidding process that saw Paramount, Skydance and Comcast also vying for the legacy assets. The transaction is comprised of cash and stock and is valued at $27.75 per WBD share, the company said. That puts the total enterprise value of the transaction at approximately $82.7 billion, with an equity value of $72 billion. Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers Discovery's film studio and streaming service, HBO Max. Warner Brothers Discovery will move forward with its spin-out of Discovery Global, which includes its massive portfolio of pay TV networks such as TNT and CNN, as previously planned. The blockbuster deal brings together the streaming giant Netflix, which has upended the media industry in recent years, and the storied film Warner Brothers Film Studio, known for its library including The Wizard of Oz, the Harry Potter franchise, and the DC Comics universe that includes Superman and Batman. It will also add the content of HBO Max, including The Sopranos and Game of Thrones. The acquisition is expected to close after the TV network separation takes place, now expected in the third quarter of 2026. Variety had earlier reported the potential deal has led a group of leading film industry figures to urge the US Congress to intervene if Netflix's bid succeeds. They have apparently warned of a looming economic and institutional crisis in Hollywood. Paramount has also reportedly accused Warner Brothers of running an unfair sale process that favors Netflix over other bidders.
A new data outage at Cloudflare brought down multiple websites, including LinkedIn and Zoom, disrupting services for users worldwide. The internet infrastructure provider said it implemented a fix and that the incident was not due to an attack.
A host of websites, including LinkedIn, Zoom, and Down Detector, went offline on Friday after fresh problems at Cloudflare. Cloudflare said shortly after 9 a.m. UK time that it was investigating issues with Cloudflare Dashboard and related APIs, referring to application programming interfaces. The internet infrastructure provider said users had seen a large number of empty pages as a result. It added shortly after that it had implemented a potential fix and was monitoring the results. A number of websites and platforms were down, including the Down Detector site used to monitor online service issues. Users reported problems with other websites including Zoom, LinkedIn, Shopify, and Canva, although many are back online. The Down Detector website recorded more than 4,500 reports related to Cloudflare after returning online. Cloudflare provides network and security services for many online businesses to help their websites and applications operate. It claims that about 20% of all websites use some form of its services. It comes only 3 weeks after previous problems at Cloudflare hit the likes of X, ChatGPT, Spotify, and multiplayer games such as League of Legends.
On to some social media regulation news. Elon Musk's platform X has been fined 120 million euros by the EU for allowing users to pay for verification, which Brussels says is deceitful to users and exposes them to scams.
Elon Musk's social media platform X has been fined 120 million euros by the EU over its blue tick badges, despite US warnings about doing so. The European Commission said by allowing people to pay for a blue verified checkmark on their profile, the platform deceives users because the firm is not meaningfully verifying who is behind the account. It said that the deception exposes users to scams, including impersonation frauds, as well as other forms of manipulation by malicious actors. In addition, EU regulators said X was also failing to provide transparency around its adverts, and it was not giving researchers access to public data. The decision means X must tell the Commission how it will bring the allegedly violating measures into compliance with EU laws or face further periodic fines. The action constitutes the Commission's first decision on a platform's non-compliance with its Digital Services Act, one of 2 rulebooks online firms must follow in order to operate their services in the EU. The DSA sets out obligations for platforms around content, data and advertising, while the Digital Markets Act establishes how companies should operate in order to benefit consumers and competition. Such rules have come under increased scrutiny from US leaders who warned against tougher regulation of tech firms by governments and regulators.
In the world of aviation, India's largest carrier, Indigo Airlines, announced the cancellation of around 500 domestic flights. The company says the disruption is caused by misjudgment and planning gaps in implementing new pilot duty rules.
Indigo said it would cancel around 500 flights on Friday in India, with all departures from New Delhi grounded, amid a deepening crisis at the country's largest airline that has admitted it failed to plan for new flight duty timings imposed on pilots. The crisis, in its 4th day, has jolted the airline, which has over 60% market share, and left thousands of passengers stranded across the country in what has emerged as the biggest challenge for the carrier ever. On Thursday, Indigo told the regulator its operations would be fully restored by February 10th. It asked for relief from some provisions that limit pilot duty hours at night. Indigo said the disruptions have arisen primarily from misjudgment and planning gaps in implementing the new pilot duty rules, which increased the amount of mandatory rest per week for pilots by 12 hours to 48 hours, effective November 1st.
Still with flying, the world's new longest commercial flight took off yesterday from Shanghai. The route connecting the city with Buenos Aires with a layover in Auckland significantly reduces travel time between China and South America.
The Shanghai-Auckland-Buenos Aires air route officially opened on Thursday. Spanning both the eastern and western, as well as the northern and southern hemispheres, the route covers nearly 20,000 kilometres, setting a new record as the world's longest one-way commercial flight, reducing travel time between China and South America by over 4 hours. At 2:19 a.m. on December 4th, China Eastern Airlines flight MU 745 took off from Shanghai Pudong International Airport with 282 passengers on board. After a brief layover in Auckland, it continued its journey to Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. The entire trip took about 25 hours, with the inaugural flight operating at near full capacity.
And now for some agriculture news. Argentina is boosting its pistachio production, capitalizing on rising global demand and a social media trend promoting pistachio treats.
Argentina is striving to capitalize on its favorable climate to cash in on a growing worldwide demand for pistachios, fueled in part by a TikTok trend around pistachio-filled treats known as Dubai chocolate. According to one study, Argentina's pistachio acreage has quintupled in the last 5 years to about 25,000 acres. Most are in San Juan, a mining and farming province nestled against the Andes Mountains. Producers say Argentina could be an important exporter that rivals the US, Iran and Turkey, the world's top pistachio growers. With the growing popularity of pistachios spurred by the Dubai chocolate trend, which went viral on TikTok in 2023, companies in Argentina have branched out to produce other pistachio sweets, including cookies. Pistachios take about 7 years from planting to bear significant fruit and need arid, hot summers and chilly winters. In San Juan province, pistachio trees have the third highest acreage of any agricultural product, following vineyards and olive groves. Faced with falling global wine consumption, some producers have replaced their vineyards with pistachios and other nuts, including almonds and walnuts.
And that is all the business we have for you for tonight. Back to you, Guy.
Are you fond of a pistachio, Andy?
Oh, I'm a pistachio lover. I just hate those, those shells that you can't open no matter what you use, just breaking your nails off them. Awful.
I'm not really a nut, if you forgive the pun, but as viewers may be able to tell, I am fond of the occasional Snickers. Thanks, Andy. Great as always. Thank you. After the break, we take a look at Eurovision's growing split as several countries walk out over Israel's entry. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Now, a major backlash is shaking the world's biggest popular music contest. 4 European countries now say they won't take part in Eurovision 2026 after organisers approved Israel's entry despite calls for a vote on its exclusion. The dispute has pushed Eurovision into one of its most divisive moments.
Israel was cleared on Thursday to take part in the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest. But the move triggered a backlash from several European countries. Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands and Slovenia have all announced they will boycott next year's event in Vienna. The 4 nations said they were pulling out in protest at Israel's inclusion. Their decisions came shortly after the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, confirmed there would be no vote on whether to exclude Israel. It was despite calls from some members to do so over the war in Gaza. The move has plunged Eurovision into one of the biggest rows in its history. But director Martin Green dismissed suggestions that the situation amounts to a crisis.
It's in no ways a crisis. We've got 35 members or so going to join us next year. Now, I understand the 4 or 5 who might not come. That's their choice. I completely respect that. I very much hope they'll be back with us in 2027, and I also very much hope that they will still broadcast the show and allow those fans who want to watch the show to watch it. But again, that's their choice.
Israel rejects the criticism and says its opponents are mounting a global smear campaign. Additionally, Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, praised the decision to allow the country to compete. Israel is not the first country to face boycott over Eurovision participation. Russia was banned from the contest in February 2022. Next year's event will be the 70th in Eurovision's history and will take place in Vienna after Austrian singer JJ won this year's contest.
Okay, joining me now in the studio to discuss this further is AnewZ's Katie Wilson. Katie, a lot to unpack here, and luckily there is a lot that you don't know. There's not a lot, rather, you don't know about Eurovision. You've reported on the event, you've interviewed the artists. How significant is this backlash, do you think, given that 4 national broadcasters have now withdrawn from the contest altogether?
So it's probably the biggest crisis that Eurovision has ever faced. We're talking 4 countries that have pulled out over Israel's participation in the competition, and more still may follow. So the boycott is including Ireland, the Netherlands, Slovenia and Spain. Some countries like Iceland are yet to decide, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also pull out. The deadline for countries to confirm their participation is Wednesday the 10th, so it's going to be a tense few days there when countries make those decisions. Now, the most significant here is Spain. Now, Spain is one of the contest's biggest financial backers. They're part of the Big Five, so that's the UK, France, Italy, Germany and Spain. They automatically qualify for the final, if you remember that, and that's due to the size of their financial contribution into staging the contest. So they're helping throw the party, essentially. And that question of funding is what's going to be worrying the EBU here. Other countries are going to have to pick up that bill, and if more countries end up pulling out, the cost for every competing country is probably going to go up, and for smaller countries, that might have an impact on their own ability to afford to participate. And the impact is far more reaching than just these 4 countries. The row's inevitably going to cast a long shadow over the contest next year and in years to come. The slogan is united by music, but we're seeing big divides here and even among participating countries. You know, will artists want to compete in Eurovision this year? If you've got a song to submit, is this the year to do it? Will artists want to share the stage with Israel or participate in what's inevitably going to be quite a controversial year? And Eurovision is a year-long event. Many people don't know this, but there's usually a promotional tour across Europe ahead of the event, and that normally takes place in London, Amsterdam, recently Barcelona, and the organisers of that party have already cancelled their event in the light of the Spanish broadcaster's decision. And we've been hearing from fans as well who are also devastated. Spain has got one of the most passionate fan bases of Eurovision. Ireland, of course, has a far-reaching history in the contest. They've won it 7 times. That's the most, and only tied with Sweden. And content creators as well, they're an integral part of Eurovision, we're used to seeing content creators at big events, but Eurovision actually cottoned on to this a lot earlier. And for about 20 years now, content creators have been integral, and many of those have said that they're not going to be covering the contest this year, which again is integral if you think we're broadcasting in multiple languages, so we need that coverage. So it has had a really big impact here.
Yeah, it's a real ecosystem now, isn't it? You're quite right. So the ripple effects, therefore, are going to be multifarious across lots of different areas. We all think we know why the boycott is happening, but I wonder whether we're filling in the blanks somewhat. Has each of the countries given a precise articulation of exactly why they're boycotting, and are all the definitions precisely the same?
Yes, so it helps to go back to yesterday and exactly what happened to really unpack this. So at the EBU summit in Geneva, there wasn't a direct vote on Israel's place in Eurovision, but the country's participation was tied to another vote, and that was a ballot among broadcasters about proposed new rules for campaigning and public voting. So broadcasters were asked to back new rules intended to discourage governments or third parties from organising voting campaigns for their act after allegations that Israel had unfairly boosted their act this year, and voting to accept those measures and those rules changes was tied to a clause where members agreed not to proceed with a direct vote on Israel's participation. Some broadcasters had actually wanted a secret ballot to happen directly about Israel's participation. Spain was one of those. And 65% of members of the EBU voted in favour, 10% abstained, so obviously that cleared Israel to compete, but also sparked others to withdraw. And now these 4 withdrawing countries have released their own statements, and as you mentioned, they are slightly different. So Ireland, they say participation remains unconscionable given the appalling loss of lives in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there. They've got concerns about the targeted killing of journalists in Gaza and the continued denial of international journalists to the territory. The Netherlands say that universal values such as humanity and a free press have been seriously violated, and for us, these are non-negotiable. The Dutch public broadcaster saying that as a public broadcaster, they've got a responsibility to remain true to that. Slovenia say this is reflecting public sentiment in Slovenia in regards to participating. And they also say on behalf of the 20,000 children who died in Gaza, they are withdrawing. Spain is referring to that secret ballot and the denial of that, and they say that increases their distrust of the festival's organisation. So slightly different angles there from each broadcaster, but ultimately those same issues there of the humanitarian crisis and free press.
The Spanish rationale is very interesting because it directly challenges the EBU, I guess. And let's just talk about the EBU. How have they defended the decision? Have they gone into detail? Have they been vociferous in their support for Israel? Exactly how have they phrased it?
So the EBU are insisting that the contest is a cultural event and it's between public service broadcasters, not a political competition between countries. And this is the principle here that the EBU keep coming back to, that this is between broadcasters, it's not between countries. And the EBU and many supporters of this are arguing that because Eurovision's purpose is cultural exchange, unity, entertainment, and not politics, actually keeping Israel in the competition, or the Israeli broadcaster, that is adhering to the spirit of Eurovision, which is always said to be a non-political event. And because they're introducing those tighter rules to safeguard fairness and neutrality, that should be enough. Now, Martin Green, who we just heard, director of Eurovision, said broadcasters really came together on a belief that Eurovision shouldn't be used as political theatre, but retain some sense of neutrality. And as we heard there, he doesn't seem too worried and says 35 countries should still probably participate. And the German broadcaster ARD echoed a similar sentiment. They said they were looking forward to participating, embracing Eurovision as a celebration of cultural diversity and solidarity. We've also heard from Israel, who called the decision to keep it in the contest a victory over critics who had tried to silence it and spread hatred. Israel's President Isaac Herzog called it an appreciated gesture of solidarity, brotherhood and cooperation. And we've also heard from the Israeli broadcaster Kan, who said the attempt to disqualify its entry can only be understood as a cultural boycott. And they're pointing to the 70th anniversary of Eurovision that's coming up and said, is this truly what we want the contest to be remembered for? But obviously it is clear from other countries that this is going to cast a shadow on that anniversary.
And presumably, Katie, over that 70 years, there have been many things that many different member countries have done politically, conflicts taken place, policies that people disagreed with very passionately, but that hasn't led ultimately to a sense of banning people or, sort of judging people in such a public way. What's your sense? Is this something that's becoming more and more common, that we have disputes, pressure on cultural institutions when these geopolitical situations arise?
So yeah, this has definitely been the biggest boycott of Eurovision. The other was about 50 years ago, but that was over a tie in the voting rather than anything political. And I think when you're representing a country and you're voting for a country, it's inevitable that politics is going to spill over. And obviously that's long been said about Eurovision, that it's political, and that's a conversation for another time. But I think that's the question here, whether it's broadcasters competing, but ultimately you're voting for a country. So in some ways, in practice, that doesn't really work. So if we think of Israel specifically, they've long been passionate about Eurovision, not just for the music, but it's also a way for them to project their national identity. We were talking earlier about Dana International, a transgender singer that won in the 90s. And again, that was a way of showcasing Israel's tolerance for LGBT rights. And the question is whether that can spill over into soft power. If Israel can win a televote, which it did last year, does that mean that they'd be perceived by viewers as less politically isolated? If we think of Ukraine's victory in 2022, that was widely viewed as a show of solidarity from Europe. And that's likely been the concern here of broadcasters that have chosen to withdraw. In labelling Eurovision as non-political might just not be the reality. There is a flip side to this. There's a small detail in the EBU's press release that sheds some light on why maybe many countries were keen to keep Israel's broadcaster in the contest. So Kan, that's the Israeli broadcaster, they're independent from the Israeli government, and they've actually often found themselves at odds with Netanyahu's administration. And it's been the association with Eurovision as the broadcaster, which many believe has protected it from threats of closure or cuts. There was talk of privatising Kan, and it's likely because the government recognises that positive PR power of taking part in Eurovision that hasn't happened. So if Israel were to be excluded yesterday, could that have an impact on Kan, Israel's public broadcaster, and then an impact on the Israeli public's access to free press? And again, we're coming back to that principle. Is it the public broadcaster taking part, or is it the country?
Yeah, very interesting. As you say, Israel have a relatively strong record on LGBTQ rights compared to many countries. So there's more complexity here than first appears, I guess. Just take us back to the Russia exclusion. What is the EBU saying about how swift that exclusion was relative to what's happened now with Israel?
Yeah, that's been a big question of why Russia was excluded, but Israel hasn't been. Now, to be eligible to participate in Eurovision, your broadcaster must be a member of the EBU, that's the European Broadcasting Union, and they're a union that spans across Europe, the Middle East, also Australasia. That's why we see Australia competing as an associate member, and that's a union of public service broadcasters. And to be a public service broadcaster, you have to be editorially independent from the government. And it was due to consistent breaches of membership obligations and violation of public service media values that the EBU decided to expel Russian broadcasters. Now, that came following the invasion of Ukraine and the coverage there from the broadcasters on what happened. So press freedom isn't happening in Russia, and that's why those broadcasters were removed, and it's because they've been expelled from the EBU that leaves them ineligible to compete in Eurovision. So the Israeli situation there is quite different in that Kan is independent, and as I mentioned, it has found itself at odds with the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu's administration. So there's a sense here of protecting public service media. Israel's been a member of the EBU since 1957 and participated in Eurovision for 50 years. So, like I say, they're in a bit of a different position, so it's quite unlikely they'll go down the same path as Russia, because it would mean expelling Kan from the EBU for similar breaches. And again, we're coming back to the argument there, is this a non-political song contest between broadcasters, or is this between governments? Now, those opposing Israel's participation is rejecting this logic, and they're pointing to the number of journalists that have been killed in Gaza and the Israeli government denying foreign press access to Gaza, and they say actually the right thing for press freedom would be to exclude Israel and to make that statement. And I want to go back to 2022 and the original statement from the EBU about excluding Russia from Eurovision was that their participation could bring the contest into disrepute. So that's a question as well. People are asking, has the contest been brought into disrepute now, and what will it mean for the contest in years to come?
Katie, it's fascinating to find out more about the inner workings and to realise that this is far much more about broadcasters than it is really about bands and pop stars. Thank you very much. After the break, we will check in with our correspondents all around the world for the very latest developments from their regions. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching PrimeTime. Now over to our correspondents all around the world. In the UK, 2 men have been arrested in Derby over suspected explosives, forcing hundreds of residents to evacuate from their homes. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage faces mounting scrutiny over past school remarks, with 28 former classmates alleging racist or anti-Semitic comments made when he was a child. AnewZ's Zainab Farazada has more.
A major incident has been declared in Derby after 2 men were arrested on suspicion of explosives offences. Police executed a warrant at a property on Walton Street following intelligence about potentially dangerous materials. As a precaution, more than 200 homes across Walton Street, Shaftesbury Crescent and surrounding roads have been evacuated. Residents have been told they might be away from their homes for up to 24 hours. Specialist units, including the Army's Explosive Ordnance Division, are on site carrying out controlled operations. Authorities warned locals as they may hear a loud bang, but said there is no wider risk to the public. Police stressed the incident is not being treated as terrorism and confirmed the evacuated zone is purely a precaution. On a different note, the row around Nigel Farage has escalated after 28 former schoolmates have come forward claiming he made racist or anti-Semitic remarks while at school. At a press conference in London, Farage fired back, accusing broadcasters such as the BBC of double standards and threatening to boycott their interviews. He denied making racist remarks with malice, while reading out a letter from a former classmate who said their Shea schoolhouse banter may have been offensive but was never intended to be racist. Supporters in his party, including Deputy Leader Richard Tice, reject the claims, calling them made-up twaddle and politically motivated. But critics say the growing number of allegations, now 28 independent testimonies, paint a troubling pattern and are calling for Farage to answer for what was once dismissed as schoolboy banter. Zainab Farazadeh, AnewZ, Manchester.
Moving east now to Central Asia, Kazakhstan and the European Union are taking their partnership to a strategic level. In Astana, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev met with European Council President Antonio Costa, who's visiting Kazakhstan for the very first time. The visit also marks the 10th anniversary of the Enhanced Partnership Agreement between Kazakhstan and the EU, highlighting a decade of growing political and economic cooperation.
Kazakhstan and the European Union are elevating their partnership to a strategic level. In Astana, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev met with European Council President Antonio Costa. The discussions focused on the economy and creating favorable conditions for European investors. Tokayev emphasized that Kazakhstan will continue to maintain a stable investment climate. Transport corridors, especially the Trans-Caspian route, were a key topic. The EU and Kazakhstan agreed to boost development, including participation in the Global Gateway Initiative and support from a €12 billion European investment package for Central Asia. Tokayev said Kazakhstan aims to become a major transport hub connecting Europe and Asia via the Black Sea and the Caucasus. Digital economy initiatives were also discussed. Both sides agreed to expand satellite internet access in rural areas, launch the first joint Central Asia EU Innovation Campus at Astana Hub, participate more actively in Horizon Europe, and strengthen cybersecurity and digital connectivity. Agreements to simplify visa procedures and readmission were also on the agenda. Antonio Costa praised Kazakhstan's reforms and highlighted its role in regional stability, including facilitating dialogue between Armenia and Azerbaijan. He noted that stability opens new opportunities to expand transport infrastructure and deepen EU cooperation. The European Union remains Kazakhstan's main trading and investment partner. Last year, trade reached around $50 billion. EU investment since 2005 is nearly $200 billion, and more than 4,000 European companies operate in the country. Also, Kazakhstan accounts for 80% of European Union's trade with Central Asia. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, AnewZ.
And staying in the region, Uzbekistan is launching a $500 million program with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to modernize its economy and cut pollution. Well, the plan combines cleaner energy, climate-focused industrial rules, and new regional production hubs. AnewZ's Seville Rajapova picked up the story.
Uzbekistan has agreed a $500 million program with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to support the country's shift toward a cleaner and more climate-focused economy. The plan includes making the energy sector more transparent, introducing climate-oriented procurement rules, and setting up a system for carbon unit monitoring and reporting. Environmental goals are also at the center of the new industrial plans for Sirdaryo, where the government is moving production out of Tashkent to reduce pollution in the capital. So far, 31 enterprises worth $500 million have already been launched with Chinese partners, and 40 more projects worth $700 million are expected. The region is preparing to attract up to $4 billion in high-value manufacturing. To support businesses relocating to Sirdaryo, the government will offer loans worth almost $835 million and simplified access to industrial land. New power infrastructure, including two 250-megawatt transformers, is being installed to handle expanded production. Uzbekistan says both initiatives serve the same goal, reducing pollution in big cities while supporting cleaner, modern production in the regions. It is Seville Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, AnewZ.
Meanwhile, tensions are rising down in the Persian Gulf after the Gulf Cooperation Council expressed support for the United Arab Emirates' claims over 3 disputed Iranian islands and Kuwait's claim over the Arash gas field. Now, Iran has strongly rejected the move, calling the claims unfounded and reaffirming that the islands and gas field are an inseparable part of its territory.
Iran's foreign ministry and 2 senior advisors to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei have slammed the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, for its support of the claims by United Arab Emirates on 3 Iranian islands and Kuwait's claim over Arash gas field in the Persian Gulf. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai on Thursday rejected as unfounded the move by the GCC summit in Manama, Bahrain on Wednesday, stressing that islands of Abu Musa, Greater Tomb, and Lesser Tomb are inseparable parts of Iran's territorial integrity. In a news release, he also said that issuance of repeated statements and making unilateral claims on Arash field do not create any rights for Kuwaiti government from a legal perspective. Moreover, Ali Akbar Velayati, International Affairs Advisor of Supreme Leader, condemned the GCC claims against Iran's territorial integrity and said the fact that the 3 Persian Gulf islands and the Arash field are an inseparable part of Iran will not change with any political communique. Similarly, Ali Shamkhani, representative of Ayatollah Khamenei in Defense Council, warned sovereign Persian Gulf countries that the 3 Persian Gulf islands and Arash gas field are red lines of Iran. His post on X said that Iran's authority in the Persian Gulf should not be misinterpreted, adding that the role of neighbors is to create security, not to play with the red lines of the Iranian nation. Following the GCC statement, Iran launched a 2-day naval military exercise on Thursday in the Persian Gulf, the Hormuz Strait, and Sea of Oman, as well as the islands of Abu Musa, Greater Tum, Lesser Tum, and Siri. Turaj Shiralilu, Tehran, AnewZ.
After the break, Guli Garadagli will be here showing us all the trending social media posts of the day. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Primetime Now. Guli Garadagli is here to delve into the world of social media. Guli, what is on the agenda tonight?
There's a fun mix of stories trending today, some Christmas moments, some futuristic moments, so let's dive in. First up, something beautiful. Lahore had a bit of a moment last night. Crowds gathered on rooftops, in parks, anywhere they could, just to catch the last supermoon of the year. It's that one night when the moon looks a little larger, a little brighter, and everyone feels it. And now, perhaps a different kind of a nighttime sight. So many times we've covered storms, politics, protests on the show, so I think we've earned this one light moment. You know when something is so absurd it actually improves your day? Let's take a look.
This furry mammal shocked shop owners in Virginia on Saturday after it went in after hours and drank its ways through the spirit section. CCTV footage shows the diligent animal rummaging for a boozy beverage before he was later found by staff passed out in the bathroom. The Hanover County Animal Protection and Shelter confirmed the raccoon was drunk and said it had since become sober.
All right, enough raccoon drama. Tokyo decided to casually show the rest of us what the future might look like, no big deal. This week, the city is hosting a massive robotics exhibition that has everything from lifelike humanoids to giant Transformer-style machines. It's one of those events where you walk in and think, okay, robots look like they're taking over, but in a cool way. And the tech on display isn't just impressive, it's practical. Let's see.
The International Robot Exhibition in Tokyo has become a playground for the future, bringing together over 670 companies and research institutions from around the globe. Visitors get a close-up look at robotics that could soon be part of everyday life, in factories, hospitals, and even homes. At Kawasaki Heavy Industries' booth, a humanoid robot stole the show. It remotely tackled a mock fire, offering a glimpse of robots that could operate in disaster zones where humans cannot safely go. Other robots mirrored visitors' movements, letting people see themselves replicated in mechanical form, while some large transformer-like machines could be piloted from inside. Factory-style robots also impressed with their strength and precision, lifting heavy objects and performing complex tasks with ease. This year's theme, Sustainable Societies Through Robotics, captures the spirit of the fair. Technology not just for efficiency, but for creating new industries and tackling social challenges. From AI to ICT systems and advanced robotic components, the exhibition offers a glimpse of a world where humans and machines collaborate to shape a smarter, safer, and more innovative future.
Robots are cool, but you have to see this. Azerbaijan really stole the show in Abu Dhabi this week. The event marking the UAE's 54th National Day brought together Karabakh horses from the State Border Service and National Dance Ensemble, a full orchestra, all moving together like one big beautiful snapshot of Azerbaijani heritage. Let's see how the choreography, the music, the horses all came together.
The Azerbaijani delegation's cultural performance has received widespread acclaim at the grand ceremony dedicated to the 54th anniversary of the United Arab Emirates. At the invitation of the UAE, the joint performance of the Azerbaijani State Border Services Cavalry Unit, National Dance Ensemble and Orchestra showcased Azerbaijan's cultural heritage and the ancient traditions of its people to the world. The appearance of Karabakh horses, the coordinated dance routines, and live musical performances contributed to the event's atmosphere. UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan attended the ceremony.
And speaking of beautiful performances, if you needed a sign that London is also officially in holiday mode, here it is. Battersea Power Station just opened its festive ice rink for the 4th year, and it's bigger and prettier than ever. You can spin on the carousel, take a Kylie Minogue-themed skate session, and enjoy the glow of the famous Battersea Towers.
Well, we're back at Battersea Power Station. It's our 4th year, and we're very excited this year. We've got an amazing new skate trail at Glide. So it's London's only skate trail, and it's 200 metres of illuminated archways with scenes of the River Thames and, of course, the iconic Battersea Power Station. We do. So from tonight, we've got Kylie Sessions, which is essentially Kylie playlist start to finish for the skaters, and that's to complement Kylie's pop-up, which is at Battersea Power Station, opening tomorrow through till Sunday. So we're very excited about that.
If you want something even more whimsical, Krakow basically turned into a Christmas fairy tale today. Glitter, tinfoil, tiny towers, and entire nativity scenes built out of pizza boxes. Yes, really. It's chaotic, creative, a little tacky, maybe, but in the best way, and the best thing is that it's been a tradition for 83 years.
A nativity scene must have, above all, a holy family. So a manger with Jesus, Joseph, and the Virgin Mary. As for the rest, the idea could be a Lycaonic, or it could be the Wawel dragon, as it is here.
All nativity scenes depict Jesus as Scripture dictates, born in humble circumstances. The Krakow nativity scene, however, differs from all of them, in that Christ is born in a palace. But it's not a real palace, it's a fantasy palace, fabricated completely in the minds of the nativity scene makers. Such exquisite things are created out of this love for Christmas and love for Krakow. Maybe they are tacky in a sense, but beautiful.
Now let's wrap up with something that will melt you instantly. Big news for animal lovers in Venezuela. We have 2 new celebrities, and they're both fluffy, white, and incredibly rare. The Maracay Zoo just showed off their newborn white lion cubs, a boy and a girl, and the whole country is already obsessed. Their parents were brought in 2 years ago, hoping for exactly this moment. And now the zoo is letting the public help choose names. It's basically a national baby shower.
The Maracay Delicias Zoo in Venezuela presented 2 white lion cubs on Monday. White male and female Timbavati lion cubs were born on November 26th. Their birth is considered a preservation milestone, as there are only an estimated 500 white lions worldwide in captivity. Most of them were found in Timbavati and Kruger regions of South Africa. Regarded as a most sacred animal by African tribal elders, these rarest of the rare species have been hunted to extinction in the wild by trophy hunters and poachers.
La madre lo ha atendido muy bien el caso del cachorro.
The cubs were born with a good weight, the female weighing 1,515 grams and the male weighing 1,465 grams. The mother has cared for them well, but as a precaution we decided to remove the female, which is being artificially fed. So far she has developed correctly. Both are lively and well formed. We're monitoring their evolution and development.
Muy atentos a su evolución y desarrollo.
White lions owe their unique colouring to a recessive white gene. This gives rise to a lion with a white pelt and pigmented eyes and skin.
And that's all I've got for you today. Don't forget to check our website at AnewZ.tv, and as always, check us out on all of the social media platforms. Back to you, Guy.
Thank you, Gully. Delightful story to finish on. Now back to some more serious news stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin has met India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, where the two leaders discussed plans to deepen their long-standing partnership. Putin said Russia is ready to provide India with uninterrupted fuel supplies and confirmed that a series of new agreements to strengthen bilateral cooperation had been signed.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have opened a day-long summit in New Delhi, their first meeting in 4 years. The visit comes as India seeks relief from US tariffs linked to its purchases of discounted Russian crude. The two leaders have discussed trade, defense and energy cooperation at a time when Western sanctions continue to reshape Moscow's long-standing partnerships.
A substantial package of agreements between governments, agencies and corporations has been signed. Many of them are aimed at expanding economic cooperation between Russia and India.
President Vladimir Putin spoke about energy ties, emphasizing Russia's role as a reliable partner. On broader strategic issues, Putin underlined the alignment between Moscow and New Delhi.
Talks on key global and regional issues confirmed that the positions of the two countries are aligned. Russia and India pursue independent and sovereign foreign policies. Together with like-minded partners in BRICS, the SCO and other countries of the global majority, we are advancing efforts to build a fairer and more democratic multipolar world order.
India has recently reduced imports of Russian oil under US pressure, with Reliance, the country's largest private refiner, halting exports made from Russian crude. Putin reaffirmed that Russia will continue to supply India with uninterrupted fuel, while both sides committed to deepen cooperation in strategic sectors including defense, technology, civil nuclear energy and transport.
Taking the economic cooperation to newer heights is our common goal. To fulfill this, we have agreed upon an economic cooperation program till 2030. Through this, our trade and investment will diversify, remain balanced and become sustainable, and newer dimensions will be achieved in these areas of cooperation.
Russia, in turn, is seeking to sell India additional air defense systems and stealth fighters, though its goal of $100 billion in bilateral trade by 2030 now appears distant as energy flows decline.
Multiple Israeli airstrikes hit southern Lebanon on Thursday in what the military says was targeted towards Hezbollah militants. Now, this comes less than 24 hours after both sides sent civilian envoys to a committee overseeing a fragile ceasefire agreed a year ago.
Israel's military said it struck targets in southern Lebanese towns on Thursday after ordering the evacuation of people from 2 buildings it alleged were being used by Hezbollah militants. It's despite a ceasefire that has been in place since last November. Residents in Mijadel, Barachit, Jabbar and Maruna were told to leave areas near sites the military said were being used as Hezbollah weapons warehouses. Local media reported a building in a densely populated neighbourhood in Jabbar was destroyed, causing extensive damage to nearby homes. The attacks come less than a day after Israel and Lebanon held their first direct talks in decades, with civilian envoys meeting in the border town of Nakura to discuss expanding their peace agreement. The ceasefire obliges both sides to stop hostilities, with Lebanon tasked with preventing armed groups from attacking Israel and Israel required to halt offensive actions. Lebanese army officials documented more than 5,000 Israeli ceasefire violations by the end of November. Israel says its operations target Hezbollah fighters and infrastructure to stop the group from rebuilding its military capabilities. Since the ceasefire began, the United Nations says Israel has carried out near-daily strikes across Lebanon, killing more than 300 people, including at least 127 civilians.
Growing fears among Afghan residents in Pakistan as US resettlements stall. The pause in immigration processing and Pakistan's crackdown on undocumented foreigners have left many uncertain about their future.
Afghans living in Pakistan are facing growing uncertainty as they wait for updates on their US resettlement cases. With Islamabad moving forward on plans to expel undocumented foreigners, many fear they could be deported at any time. Their concerns have deepened after the US paused immigration processing for several countries, including Afghanistan.
It was very shocking, a traumatic situation. What we had hoped for, it went against our aspirations. The Afghan community here in Pakistan, who's waiting for US cases, is facing a lot of difficulties. This was a path of hope that maybe through these cases, the Pakistani government would also give us some relief. But now that they've made this decision, they've ended our hopes of migrating. And they've also given a green line to the Pakistan government, saying, we're not resettling these people in the US, you can deport them.
The policy was announced by the Trump administration, halting green card, citizenship and special immigrant visa applications from 19 countries under partial travel restrictions, a list that includes Afghanistan.
Over to the Winter Olympics now. The Olympic flame has arrived in Rome on Thursday as preparations are underway in the northern Italian town of Cortina d'Ampezzo. The mountain resort is getting ready to welcome athletes to a newly built temporary village made up of sustainable mobile homes.
Nestled in the Dolomites, Cortina d'Ampezzo is racing toward the finish line ahead of the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. Officials said on Thursday that the Olympic Village is almost ready to receive athletes competing from February 6th to the 22nd.
All projects that cannot be postponed for the Olympics will be delivered between now and the end of January. Let's say that I arrived 19 months ago, when the projects that had been prepared had no chance of being completed for the Olympics. We have shown that by working with knowledge, quality and attention, it is possible to meet deadlines and costs and guarantee quality.
The village will host 1,400 athletes in 377 mobile units, each built with recyclable materials to support the game's sustainability goals.
It is a project that stems from Design for All. 50% of the mobile homes are for people with disabilities, while 20% are for athletes with disabilities. Starting from the needs of people with disabilities has also allowed us to improve the project for everyone.
Organisers say the quiet mountain setting will offer athletes a unique experience, combining privacy with access to communal areas and a 24-hour canteen.
The mobile homes contribute to the well-being of athletes primarily due to their location. Athletes will have the opportunity to stay in mobile homes, in their residences, in isolation, with no noise other than the sound of the mountains. They will also have the opportunity to use the communal areas, the 10,000 square meters of facilities at the Olympic Village, and the canteen open 24 hours a day.
The Cortina site is one of 13 Olympic venues stretching across northern Italy. The region will host 116 events across 16 disciplines, including alpine skiing on the Tofane slopes and sliding sports at the newly redeveloped Cortina Sliding Centre. The 2026 Games will mark Italy's third Winter Olympics. Cortina last hosted in 1956, with Turin hosting the event in 2006.
Well, that is all we have for Prime Time tonight and for this week. We do hope you'll join us on Monday for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.